Hollywood romances. It's a tale as old as time. From Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton to Harrison Ford and the late Carrie Fisher in Star Wars, Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Rachel McAdams and Ryan Gosling in The Notebook, Twilight, Emily in Paris. I think you get the gist. Romances tend to almost be an occupational hazard in the realm of Hollywood, and it's understandable. Acting is vulnerable, and sometimes on-set chemistry doesn't always evaporate into nothingness as soon as the director yells cut. But more recently, especially in the era of social media where things can be orchestrated to go viral on purpose for publicity, there has been a spike in this phenomenon known as PR relationships. It's exactly what the label says it is. Relationships between co-stars that are purely orchestrated for PR purposes to generate hype and to get as many butts on cinema seats as possible. Notable examples that come to mind are Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell in the promotion of Anyone But You. I remember seeing through that like crystal clear glass, and many of us did, which is kind of the point of this whole video. Spoiler alert, these tactics don't tend to work, but the mainstream media is completely in on it because they just play along and generate as many headlines as they can. I remember just feeling so annoyed and bombarded by the Sydney Sweeney Glen Powell rumors, and they were especially salacious because at the time Sydney Sweeney was engaged, and apparently her fiance, or ex-fiance I should say, was in on it. Which brings me to the most recent and ongoing offenders, and one of the most egregious that I have seen. Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, if that's how you say his last name, in the promotion of Wuthering Heights. This movie is out, I want to say today, the 13th of February, just in time for Valentine's Day. The director of this movie is Emerald Fennell, by the way, and if you've seen Saltburn, then you may understand why I'm scratching my head over this production. But I digress. This is not a critique of the movie. Maybe I should see it and potentially critique it in a future episode. Who knows? Point being, Margot Robbie, who is not only starring in this movie, but producing it, which I suppose explains how at 35, 36 years old, she was cast to play the role of a teenager, and her co-star, on-screen lover Jacob Elordi, are completely out of control. Apparently, there is an official reason as to why Margot thought her casting, made sense. Again, she produced the movie. They wanted it to be more relatable to the current audience. So she says, Kathy's in her mid-20s to early 30s in this version, which puts so much more pressure on the marriage situation. A bunch of people telling an 18-year-old, oh, F, you better hurry up and get married. That doesn't really hold the same weight to a modern day audience member. I mean, in the Western world, sure, but I've been all over the world, and in some areas, trust me, they're still doing that. But I guess I understand what she's saying. I still think a 20-year almost discrepancy in the age of an actress and the character whom she is meant to portray is still a bit too much. I mean, you could have gone for a girl 10 years younger in her mid-20s. I remember such an uproar over Emma Watson's casting as Belle because she was 10 years older than Belle, who was 17. So yeah, 20? I don't know if it explains this away. You can let me know in the comments. Now, before we get into why this is so problematic, let's make two things clear. Firstly, Jacob is currently believed to be single. I know nothing about this. I just had to research this on the fly. Apparently he was dating Olivia Jade. Do you remember the girl involved in the whole bribing universities scandal from a few years ago?
Experience of like game days, partying. I don't really care about school.
Yeah, he was dating her. Whether they were together when Wuthering Heights was being filmed is unbeknownst to me, but given the timeline, they most likely were. But more importantly, Margot Robbie is a married woman with a child. And so keep that in mind while we go through the slew of cringe-inducing quotes that have I been saying Megan this whole time? That Margot and Jacob have been spouting in their endless attempts to promote Wuthering Heights. So apparently Jacob was constantly lurking around set, watching Margot.
I remember the first couple of days on set, he would just be like always in the vicinity where I was, but like in a corner, like watching. And then he wasn't, and I was really unnerved and unmoored, and I felt like quite lost, like just like a kid without their like blanket or something. But I found myself so dependent, like codependent kind of.
If you have the opportunity to share a film set with Margot Robbie, you're going to make sure you're within 5 to 10 metres at all times, watching how she drinks tea, how she eats her food, how she does it, when is it going to slip, when is the thing going to come undone, and it never comes undone. I was enamoured by her, and I still am.
Yeah, I'm sure her husband can say the same. I mean, he did put a ring on it after all. Jacob seems to have a long-standing crush on Margot Robbie. He shared that he's been a fan of Robbie since her work in the Australian soap opera Neighbours. He also saw Robbie in The Wolf of Wall Street, and that was when he knew she became a global phenomenon. You come out in that film and something changed in the world. In my world.
No touching.
So basically, he saw her nude, because that's Margot Robbie's claim to fame. Let's not beat around the bush. And it's meant to be some type of revelation that, just like every other warm-blooded straight man, that visual rocked his world.
There were these kind of explosive moments when we would be standing alone, sort of waiting for a scene or walking to a setup, where I'd look across at her and she'd be looking at me, and you really realised you were looking at Catherine and she was looking at Heathcliff, and in that moment we really were a part of their love, for real.
Look, I'm not accusing them of having fallen for each other, because I think this is a PR ruse, but this is what I mean by getting married to a Hollywood actor is a marital hazard. For them, it's an occupational hazard. You could potentially fall in love with each other. As someone who has been in a relationship for a long time, I don't know how that's possible, because it's like, that slot is occupied. I don't mean it like that. That sounded a bit dirty. Count 4. The two hated shooting when the other wasn't on set. There was this moment when she was off with Shahzad for God knows how long, Elordi recalled, prompting Robbie to reply, and you were off with Allison. And I was like, this is just not right. Elordi added, loved shooting with Allison, and Shahzad's a great guy, before Robbie remarked, love them more than anything. But I was like, he's mine. I'm losing count. Count 5. Elordi made a romantic gesture on Valentine's Day. In the same interview with Vogue Australia, Robbie recalled how on the previous Valentine's Day, Elordi surprised her. You made my day, and as Heathcliff, filled my room with roses, and it was so cute, she said, admitting she didn't do anything for Elordi to mark the holiday. You definitely beat me, she said. Yours was so epic. I remember thinking on Valentine's Day, oh, he's probably a very good boyfriend, because there was a lot of thoughtfulness in this. You did a lot of very thoughtful things. Yeah, like openly talking about how obsessed he was with you and filling your room with roses and staring at you and wondering how is it that you look so majestic while you do mundane things like sipping tea.
Watching how she drinks tea, how she eats her food, how she does it, when is it going to slip, when is the thing going to come undone, and it never comes undone.
All knowing that your husband was gonna have to read all this or hear it. Very thoughtful indeed. Speaking of her husband, now I mentioned that we would bookmark this particular notion of, oh, the husband, the fiance, they're in on it, because that's what everyone said about Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell. I suppose as far as the husband / fiance are concerned, it is relevant because it will dictate how they feel about something, one would presume. I can't see how I would be okay with something. I might go along with it in terms of, oh, you know, this is going to make us money, this is going to be good for the movie. But deep inside, while I see this playing out, I just don't see how a warm-blooded human being can be okay with it. But then again, these Hollywood types, they're made of different stuff. But secondly, they might think they're okay with it. But what happened between Sydney Sweeney and her ex-fiance after the promotional tour? They broke up. I mean, what kind of a relationship is it when you prioritize money so much over the fidelity of your connection, if that makes sense? I was going to say sanctity, but that sounds really religious. I think a lot of us can agree that there's a limit to how far we will go to make money. But in general, relationships, romantic relationships, tend to be quite sacred when they're genuine, when they're based on real love and connection. And I would venture to say, and I think you can confirm or deny in the comments section, that a lot of us wouldn't want to play and toy with our personal relationships in the pursuit of money. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. So when people say that Margot's husband is in on it, number one, we don't know what actually happened behind the scenes. Is he in on it, or is he simply aware of it and just doesn't like it? But he can't do or say anything about it because, well, it's Margot Robbie. Because it's one thing to actively be in on it, as in you have planned it with Margot. You know, Tom has planned it with Margot and he's completely in cahoots and he's greenlit it, basically. Then you can make the argument, he knows his wife loves him. He knows she's an actress. He knows she's playing a role. He knows what he got himself into when he married her. It's a marital hazard. But it's an entirely different story when she's the producer, she's Margot Robbie, she's calling the shots, and she tells him this is just how it is. What are you gonna do about it? And objectively speaking, is it really fine, even if the spouse was completely in on it, for us to normalize this behavior? Regardless of whether the spouse feels disrespected, the notion of what's happening is disrespectful. Put this in any other context. Imagine that your husband or your wife is working just at an office and you're constantly being bombarded on social media, on her social media, with photos and quotes and just, you know, cute little cutesy things between her and her male coworker. Not only is this happening on social media, when you meet this coworker in person, they're giggling and staring at each other longingly and talking about how they couldn't get through the workday without each other. I despise jealousy. It is the green monster after all. But sometimes, especially when someone's encroaching on something that you hold so dear, or someone rather in this case, it's only natural to feel that sort of, you know, what Margot said, hey, he's mine. It's also so unnecessary. It just makes you think your movie must be so bad if you are willing to lower yourselves to these depths by pretending to actually have an off-screen fling just to convince people to go see your movie. So you're relying on salaciousness and rumor rather than relying on the artistic integrity of the film, rather than allowing the film to simply stand on its own two legs and being confident enough to know that people will come because the movie is just that good. So when these tactics are resorted to, I, for one, think you're trying to cover up for the fact that you're not too confident about this movie. So you're pulling all the stops, including disrespecting your own marriage, in an effort to convince people that it's worth seeing. Personally, it's never worked on me. If I want to see a movie, I'm going to go see it, regardless of whether I think the lead stars are boinking off screen. And in the same vein, if I don't want to see a movie, I won't see it, even if I think the co-stars are boinking off screen. And then the final cherry is the fact that they are insulting our intelligence by even attempting these ploys, because most people see right through it. But what do I know? I'm just a person in this world, just one of billions. So let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you're going to go see this movie. And if you did go see it, please do let us know what you thought. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time. And it's not just the youngins who are doing it. What the hell's that?